September 24, 2020 meeting of the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals is now open. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 27th?
So moved.
All in favor? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, now we have some decisions. First one is 3036 Andrew and Dana Stone, 527 Meadow Lane. I have a motion to approve that decision as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 3066 ESO Realty, 145 Cooper's Farm Road. I have a motion to approve that decision.
I'll make a motion to approve that decision.
I'll second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 On the application of 3075 Eleanor W. Cohen, 359 Meadow Lane. I have a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve that decision.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I thought we'd have a decision on I thought 72 Gin Lane, but I guess we don't yet, right?
No, I don't.
Okay. How about BHNH, 109 Hampton Road?
Yes, we had a decision for that as well as for 3074.
Do you have that decision for BH?
Yes, they were circulated for the work session.
Okay, all right. I have it here then. I have a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What was the other one, David?
3074.
Oh, yeah, Anthony Padovano. I have a motion to approve that one.
I'll make a motion to approve the decision for number 3074.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So that leaves Joyce Trust, which we know about, 72 Gin Lane,
Yes.
and we have one for 412 First Neck Lane from...
Yes, that was also circulated. That was 3080.
Right. I have a motion to approve that one.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll
the decision
second.
for-
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Take all the decisions, and leave 3045 out and 3065 still pending. We have an application, I believe, or a letter to adjourn 950 Meadow Lane from John Bennett. Has everybody seen that letter?
I did not see that letter.
Neither had I.
I saw the neighbor asking for a delay because of the timing.
Yes,
That's the last
Bennett
thing I saw.
hand up.
All right. I move we adjourn that 3076 till next month.
Wait, which one are you adjourning?
3076, 950 Meadow Lane.
I think it's only the neighbor. I shouldn't say only. It's the neighbor requesting the adjournment, so I don't know that.
So it's something from John Bennett too.
Yeah, John is raising his hand. Would you like me to promote him to panelist?
Please, please, we can get this cleared up.
Okay. John, you're in.
Thank you. No, I'm not requesting an adjournment. I'm ready to go forward in full. The next door neighbor is requesting an adjournment. I've never seen this board accede to a request for a neighbor to postpone a matter. It's my application. I should be allowed to move forward. If at the end of my application you desire to give the neighbor more time, then that's up to you. But your process has never been to allow a neighbor to drive an adjournment.
Very good, John.
Excuse me?
I said, very good.
Okay,
Go ahead with what you have to say on the application.
thank you. As it relates to the request for an adjournment, though, I will tell you my response to it in full deals with Mr. Kelly's request for an adjournment. It's interesting because I became aware that Mr. Kelly was representing a neighboring person in opposition at a work session of the board. I never received a copy of his opposition papers. Indeed, to this date, I have not received them. I do have them because Mr. Kirst was kind enough to forward them to me. So I'm sort of scratching my head that Mr. Kelly would be requesting an adjournment about some documents that I filed over the course of since the last board meeting, because he hasn't seen fit to give me any of his papers. But be that as it may, if you want to give him time, that's to respond. That's clearly up to you. But what's interesting about all of Mr. Kelly's oppositions and the oppositions of his architect, which we've dealt with not only in a letter in response from John Burson, from Sawyer Burson, as well as my letter, one of my several letters in response, was that none of the neighbors' opposition points have anything to do with the matter that's before you and under your jurisdiction, which is a wetlands application for some fill and a retaining wall and a little bit of parking maybe within the 125-foot setback, all which I'm going to demonstrate to you is so clearly within the bailiwick of what you folks have been granting since 1989. I'm going to give you a whole cast of cases where you've granted even more relief for these minor structures, in particular where somebody's like we are is meeting the entire 125 setback for everything. But in any event, all of Mr. Kelly's opposition relates to the location and the architecture of a house that is doing something in a project which I think is one of the better projects I've worked on, which is to take a house that's at the site that is now substantially seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area and redevelop the site so that all of the habitable space is landward, conforming to the coastal erosion hazard area. That's a big thing, even if you don't, even if it's not technically part of the wetlands aspect, it's something that you're charged to look at in terms of preserving the health, safety, and welfare of the town, of the village, and also just generally as a board encouraging people to come into conformance not only with zoning laws, but certainly environmental laws, which is what we're doing here by moving this house out of the coastal erosion hazard area. It's a very strange request. And I think Mr. Burson, who's the project architect, I don't know if John is on, but he did submit a letter in opposition to the opposing architect's letter. Very strange. Only time I've ever seen a neighbor who, contrary to the other neighbor, the neighbor to the west, who submitted a very specific letter in support, not only because of the location of the house, but some of the things that we're doing in the fill, which by the way is encouraged in the village code. We're not like other municipalities, we encourage fill. But the neighbor to the east is saying, I've never seen a neighbor on the ocean object to someone who's going to move the house back, thus opening up the lateral views. So we're going to open up the neighbor's view, his lateral view, to the peripheral view, I guess I should say more properly, to the west. And what is the neighbor proposing? What the neighbor's architect is proposing is something that is quite literally absurd. He's suggesting that we move the house, is it 30 feet? Bailey's here with me. The house 30 feet to the north. That's right, yes. He's proposing that we move the house 30 feet to the north, a house that complies with the setback for a house 30 feet to the north into a non-compliant area. And really strangely, suggesting that we move because he's concerned about some retaining walls, which are necessary for the septic system, which, by the way, in our latest iteration, we've lowered, I think, 1.5 feet, suggesting that we move the septic system 80 feet to the north. So it would be, instead of a conforming 200 feet, 120 feet from the wetlands. And the rest, so I would just ask you, and it's not a big ask, to just dismiss those things out of hand. They're absurd. They're nonsensical. To ask somebody to come out who has a house that's conforming, we've taken great pains to design this house, which, by the way, in its latest iteration got smaller. To ask somebody who's taking great pains to design a house that now conforms to the coastal erosion hazard area and conforms to the wetland setback, the most significant wetland setbacks in any local law out here, conforms to those setbacks, both the house and the septic system, to move them into an area that doesn't conform, or just moves it into the regulated area, I should say, which is just an absurd request. And I'm sure you'll agree with that. Then you'll see that, as Mr. Burson shows out, these literally fantastical shade studies and presentations of what my client's house is going to look like. They were done on the back of the envelope, really sort of a scare tactic. I urge you to take a look at the Sawyer-Burson modeling, which shows, really puts the lie to the neighbor's architect's presentation and representation of this house. If you scale out the way the neighbor's architects has presented my client's house, it comes out to be, I think it's either 65, something like 65 or 70 feet. Absolutely they're misrepresentations is what they are. Sort of shocking that someone would try to get away with that. So, but in any event, none of the statements made by the neighbor have anything to do with what is before this board. The neighbor's asking you to move structures, the house, the septic system, which again, we've taken great pains to get out of the regulated area into the regulated area. So I don't really know, to the extent that Mr. Kelly wants time to respond, I hope he's got something to say that has something to do with what's before the board. The other thing I have to say, and before I go on to talk about some of the comments that were raised, I do have to say that I'm going to raise this. As a matter of fact, it takes a lot for me to do this because fortunately, most of the East End Bar is a fairly collegial group of men and women. So I don't like to, I really don't like to do things like this, but I did some soul searching, but I think it would be malpractice for me to do anything else. And that's the conclusion that I came to after speaking to some of my very learned colleagues today. I'm going to read a letter that's in the mail, but it's regarding Mr. Kelly's representation or his firm's representation, period, before this board. So Mr. Kelly intends to appear in behalf of a private property owner, the neighbor to the east, in opposition to this application. Mr. Kelly is clearly conflicted from representing a private property owner before this board or any other village board, in as much as Mr. Kelly's associate, now I don't know if she's an associate or of counsel, Alexandra Halsey Storch, is an assistant village attorney. She's employed by the town, or excuse me, the village. This is a significant conflict of interest, and I'm going to talk to you, and I'll send this letter to David, and I'll send it to all of you, and I'm going to send it to the village board. And it's been the subject of multiple reviews, these very same fact pattern by the New York State Professional Ethics Committee. In opinion 14370, the committee specifically addressed whether a part-time municipal attorneys may represent clients before an administrative agencies in that municipality. The committee held, it's the opinion of the committee that a lawyer in these circumstances may not represent private clients in matters before administrative agencies of the municipality, irrespective of consent by the municipality. By opinion 292273, the committee addressed whether an attorney representing a zoning board of appeals could represent private clients before the town board. And the committee noted because the powers of the appeal board and the town board, and again, you can substitute appeals board, village appeals board, and village board, same thing, are in many instances concurrent, overlapping, and intertwined. It would be improper for the attorney for the appeals board to represent a client before the town board in a zoning matter. It is the duty of an attorney in public employ to remain above suspicion, even at personal financial sacrifice. The appellate division, now not just the committee, the appellate division in a matter, Thomas English, an attorney, which was, as at 587 New York sub 2nd 34, it's a second department case, which is where we are, censured an attorney who engaged in the following conduct. In that case, an attorney was a part-time attorney for the village of Elmsford. The attorney's partner in his private practice appeared before the village ZBA. The firm, the appeal was, the attorneys appealed the determination, and the second department said that it was improper. The firm's representation of the private individual, the partner, continued to do so, and it was held to be improper. While Mr. Kelly himself does not hold the position of the assistant village attorney with the village of Southampton, an attorney in his firm holds such a position, and the firm is disqualified from representing the private client before the Board of Appeals. For conflicts purposes, you are your partner, you are your associate. So it's no different than if Mr. Kelly was in Ms. Storch's position and he was appearing before you. So I raise that. It's really not up for you to decide, but it would be remiss of me not to put that in the record. So let me talk to you about what we've done and move on to the substance of the matter. Okay. As we've stated, we've taken a wholly non-conforming structure, bring it back before the coastal erosion hazard line, and the house and the all of the systems except a one retaining wall, which, by the way, in the prior iteration of the plans was at 125 feet from the wetlands. In the current iteration, the westerly portion of the retaining wall is 130 feet. We also submitted some plans from Sawyer Burson, has a very significant landscape architecture arm, and we're working with Aries Design, demonstrating how that area of between the 125 and the 150 that we're filling, actually, because of the type of species there, the importation of fill into that area is going to help those larger plants survive. So we submitted that as part of the Sawyer Burson project, and I'll give that to you for your review and for Chick's review as well. The other thing that's, I know there was some concern that Dan had and that Mark had about the amount of fill in the property. I'm going to talk a little bit about fill, but we did at the work session bring to your attention the fact that only about somewhere between 1/9 and 1/10 of the fill, and we've shown the science as to why we want that there to actually aid those larger plants. Only about 1/10 of the fill is actually, 1/9 of the fill is actually for the landscaping between 125 and 150. It's 975 cubic yards. This is on Sawyer Burson's L200. I made reference to it at the work session, but it's important because the septic fill is 955. No one can ever be criticized for that. We have to meet the separation requirement between the bottom and the leaching structures and the groundwater. So no one ever gives anybody a hard time about fill for achieving that separation. There's a dune renourishment fill. That's a huge chunk of it. That's something that everybody promotes. That's 3,195 cubic yards. The existing house that we're taking outside of the coastal erosion area has a foundation. We're going to fill that in. That's that's 670 cubic yards. So the rest of the fill is around the house. The rest of the fill is around the house. Now, it's interesting, there's no attempt to raise the house as a result of the importation of the fill. You can't do that. Your house, where the house height comes from is set as a result of some litigation and then some recent public law, relatively recent public laws that actually Mr. Voorhees was pivotal in drafting, and the village board looked at. The jumping off point is the base floodplain elevation plus 2 feet of freeboard. So you could bring in all the fill you wanted, you don't gain any height. Okay, that's very important. And then the other thing that's very important is that the village actually in the area, now I'm talking about the area of the amount of fill around the house. The village actually encourages, where is that code section? The village actually encourages the importation of fill. This is something that came out of the study that was done and the public hearings that were done with the recent, relatively recent amendments. The section 116-12G3, in the case of an elevated building, the terms and conditions of a building permit can require that the natural grade of the lot be increased vertically for the purpose of minimizing any adverse impact on the neighborhood of the community, which is why the neighbor to the west has given us a letter of support, because that neighbor to the west, like just about every other homeowner on Gin Lane, Meadow Lane, realizes the village of Southampton is unique and it encourages the importation of fill so that you don't have, you know, these structures that you see, for example, in West Hampton, to a certain degree, Southampton. Certainly, probably the most extreme example is down on the North Carolina coast, you know, in Kitty Hawk and those areas, and Ocracoke and those areas where you just have these houses sitting up on what look like stilts, because you have to get the houses up in the air. The village of Southampton has specifically encouraged that. They just want to make sure, and we did a lot of studies about this because I was very much involved in the legislation. The FEMA bulletins say that as long as you have 2 feet of space, so that during a flood event, the water can run through. Non-structural fill has no problem. There's no problem with non-structural fill. So that's important, because I thought I heard someone suggesting that by this importation of fill, and again, I'm talking about the fill around the house, and sure, I'm talking about the fill between the 150 and the 125, which, as we've demonstrated, is going to be very helpful for maintaining these new plantings that we're going to put in. But that fill is not doing anything other than has been encouraged. So we don't remember, you don't gain any height from it. Your jumping off point, your elevation is set. So Sawyer Burson did a very helpful thing at A301. I recommend that to both, I think Mark and Dan were somewhat concerned about this. I think I'm sure this will put your mind at ease. We're not trying to gain any collateral advantage here. Quite candidly, we're trying to follow village law. But John Burson does a very helpful chart for you. We're in a zone that requires it's 19 feet above. I call it sea level. Chick would correct me and say there's a more scientific and specific way to describe that data, but they keep on changing it all the time, so I just call it sea level. So 19 feet above sea level is where we start. We hang the utilities and the ductwork and the piping runs and electrical, which I think is very wise. You know, Dan Guzowitz, who's a contractor, can tell you that sometimes people forget you've got to get this stuff above the base flood elevation. Next thing you know, people are cutting some of that stuff into the horizontal members and weakening those members. So Sawyer Burson very wisely runs that beneath the, beneath the floor package, and then it gives you then gives you, what do we have? 2 feet 6 inches for floor structure. That's steel beams, joists, concrete slabs, floor leveling, subfloor, and finished floor. No one's trying to gain any advantage here. So that's where the starting off point is. That's what you have. You have this 17 plus 2 feet of freeboard, 1 feet, which is not greedy, to hang those mechanicals, 2.5 feet for a floor package, which is also not greedy. I've seen people in zoning board of appeals in the town try to stretch that to 3.5, 3 feet, 2.5 feet, not greedy at all. And in any event, you got to remember that, and I'm telling you this, not that it's really any part at all of this application, but I saw, because we're not asking for any height relief or anything like that, but I saw some concern, and I just want to let you know there's no funny games being played here. We're following the letter of the law to the T. And then, of course, we can't get any higher because the height limitation in the village of Southampton is 35 feet above the base floodplain elevation +2 for a gabled roof house, 28 feet, excuse me, above base flood elevation +2 for a flat roofed house, as you have here. So there's no one's trying to gain any advantage. Let me talk a little bit about these structures, just a retaining wall. And what do we have? Bailey, we have a training. What do we have in the 125? A retaining wall. We moved a lot of the parking out of so it conforms with the 150, shrunk the parking court. So what do we have in the 125? We have that retaining wall. We have a little bit of fill. Do we have any? A little bit of parking and an access driveway, which again, the access driveway, we removed the access driveway, which was going through the middle of these 2 little wetlands pockets, and we move it off to one side, which again, you know, was encouraging. And by the way, that was a comment that Chick had made to me some time ago when he was kind enough, as he sometimes does, to meet me in the field so that I can try to develop a program that's consistent with his concerns and certainly consistent with the long history of this board's applications since 1989, when the board first got the wetlands jurisdiction. So I'm going to read off some cases to you that this board has decided, and I'm going to talk to you about locations of structures and locations of retaining walls. And these are all cases that have been decided by this board on redevelopments of properties. I have, and I've submitted them with the board for the board's edification. And the reason why I've done this is, and David Kurse will tell you, there's a line of cases which first came out of a Court of Appeals case, and there's quite a bit of progeny. A line of cases started with a case called Knight versus Amelkin, which say, you know, if you have, it's an administrative stare decisis is what it is. It said, if you have cases that are similar or even less aggressive than cases that you've granted, in so many words, it doesn't use the word, but it says you better have a damn good reason for doing anything other than approving that case, which is why I felt very confident, and I think I'm hopeful, and I'm actually sort of confident that you will, by the end of your reading all of this stuff that we've been talking to you about now, that this is a great case, a great application before you. You got 259 South Main Street. What was that? What was the name of that application? It was just 259 South Main Street. It was an addition to a home allowed 20.5 feet from the wetlands. We're 125 feet with just a retaining wall and some fill. 640 Ox Pasture Road, home 96 feet, pool 82 feet. Again, the house, everything conforms. AJR Meadow Lane, driveway gates adjacent to wetlands. I threw it in there, but it's structure within that setback. Some of these are cases that I handled. Van Greenfield, attached garage and house 50 feet from the wetlands. And I'm going to go through some of these cases that were on the north side of Meadow Lane. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a wetlands expert. You know, one of the things that's interesting about practicing law is that you do acquire a lot of information, but I don't even think you need to be a lawyer to know, as a resident of the East End, that in comparison to the nature and quality of the wetlands on this site, which are some species indicators, that the wetlands on the bayside, where you have inundation and spartina and everything, that's the true cradle of the ocean. That's a real habitat, okay? We just happen to be stuck with a couple of pockets that meet the technical definition of wetlands. I'm not denigrating them. That's why we're here. We went out, we made sure before we bought the property that they were marked, but it's not the same high lands that you have across the street. So then Greenfield's case, we have, I don't think he owns that anymore. It's owned by a guy, I'm trying to remember, he owns Il Molino in New York, the restaurant, 50 feet from wetlands. Madison Avenue Capital Partners home and pool located 50 feet from the wetlands. Mark, that was your case. The pool was 57.4 feet from the wetlands. Greta Holby, new home, 50 feet from the wetlands. And Stone, new garage, reconstruction of a greenhouse within 150 feet of the regulated area. Abby Rosen, 72 feet from the wetlands. Let me talk to you about two on the south side of Meadow Lane.
John, I think we get the message.
Okay. All right. Okay. I was surprised that anyone had a problem with a mere retaining wall and some of the stuff on an area that we were developing so well. I wouldn't have brought the case if I didn't think it was solely within 30 years of behavior by this board. And you know something, people should be able to rely on that. If you're going to change something, when this board has made their own very significant body of an effect, administrative stare decisis, that should happen legislatively. It just ain't fair to anybody to do it in any other way. So, all right, let me move on. So I did tell you about the neighbor from the west who was supportive of it. I talked about and collected some of the cases, how this team, this board has dealt with it, dealt with it in the past. I'll recommend to Chick and to the board members the schematic and the narrative from Sawyer Burson on how they get to the elevation and the floor package. Not only that, but also the very beneficial effect of having greater fill elevated above base, above the groundwater in that 125 to 150 zone. And just want to go through my what I call my security blanket to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything else. Relocating the driveway, significant revegetation, demolishing the existing structures. Everything's going to be FEMA compliant, which, by the way, some of the stuff in the wetlands law talks about making sure that stuff is, you know, is not going to be impacted by floods. So I think you have a lot to digest there. I feel very confident that by the end of your making your way through all of these submissions, you will be comfortable that we have created a project that is environmentally sound, compliant with setbacks, all zoning setbacks, all wetland setbacks, except that little bit of, and by the way, it's, you know, Gil Flanagan and I always talk about this, that 125, 150, 200, you don't find the word setback in the village code. It's a regulated area, which is good because it lets you to regulate things in those areas. But as you can see by the various decisions, your board's position on that has been it's a regulated area. We're going to try to do what we can do to mitigate things. But when we see somebody coming in with such a net gain for a project, we're going to allow a little bit of flexibility so that the development can take place in a reasonable manner. I think it's a great project. Here to answer any questions. I don't know if there's anyone from Sawyer Burson on. I think that we're going to rely on the submissions.
John Burson has his hand up.
Oh, John, well,
He actually just took it down. Oh, no, there it is.
okay.
Would you like me to bring him in?
I would, it's up to you guys. Yeah, I would like you to bring him in as the applicant's lawyer.
Bring him in.
You're connected, John. You have to unmute. John, you've been promoted to panelist. John Burson, you can unmute.
Got it. Okay. Thank you to the board for taking the time to hear this application. We were here before you on July 23rd. And John Bennett, thank you for that very clear presentation. Just want to say I am here. I think some team members are also present. If there are any questions, we're available. But I think that John kind of covered everything. So I just wanted to thank everybody again.
John, does Tim want to talk about? Well, I'll just leave it to the submissions. You know, Tim gave such a nice explanation for that, the beneficial planting effect of that, Phil. I'll just leave it to the submissions. I think it was great.
Okay.
Also wishing to be heard is Mr. Christopher Kelly. Should I promote him?
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, you're in. I believe you're in. Yes, you have to unmute, Mr. Kelly.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
Okay. Christopher Kelly for the neighbor at 930 Meadow Lane. We've submitted previously some analysis based on the original plans and the application is originally presented in July. We checked the zoning board file earlier this week, Tuesday, and found nothing substantial. And today there was a substantial amount of submission, including completely new plans, changed site plan, changed architectural plans. And John was nice enough to send me a package which arrived today. And then there was further submissions at 3:33 this afternoon. So with that in mind, we would like, because my client's concerned about the impact of the project on their property, we would like the time to perform an analysis to see if the changes in the application mitigate the concerns that we originally identified. So we would ask that it be put over so we can submit additional information, having just received these plans today.
Tell us just what are the concerns of the neighbor?
Beg your pardon?
What specific concerns does the neighbor have?
Concerns include the height and the location of the building, the massing, but we're facing a retaining wall that in the prior, up until the plan that was submitted this week was 5.5 feet high, holding back a septic system, and now it's going to hold back a parking area and a septic system right at the edge of the property. It's a question of how this fits with the development of our property so that we can both coexist in a good way. We also are looking at screening, and one of the problems is when you jam the retaining wall in there and the septic system on top, it eliminates the ability to put up substantial screening. Now I see that I can see why the neighbor to the west might be supportive, because there's in the latest plans there's substantial screening of which looks like mature trees along that side, but there's not that, at least from the initial analysis, that type of screening on our side of the property. With respect to John's concern about having received submission, I will submit to the board. I submit to you that he is wrong, or maybe he doesn't look at his email, but on October 18th at 10:06, he was copied on the same email that the village was with our submission from our architect. So I don't know whether he didn't see that or how it's slipped by, but it was submitted to him, as I would always do as a participant in a legal proceeding when there's counsel on the other side.
Didn't get it, but I'm not trying to call you, things happen.
I'll send the village the copy of the email. It was emailed to the village with John as a copied recipient.
The only thing I'll add, yes, there was some stuff that we filed just recently, but we did file all of the elevations, a site plan, architectural plan, site development plan, cut and fill comparison, landscape plans, septic design. Those were all filed before the last work session.
Well, the received stamp on the documents that I saw today said September 22nd.
Well, for some of them, yeah, but these we
No, the
filed.
whole package said, it was the cover letter said September 22nd.
No, Chris, hand delivery, September 15th, 2020.
I was in the file on Tuesday and they weren't in the file. I'm telling you, John, I'll show you the.
September 5th, hand delivered. I have a note of that. September 6th. It all doesn't matter. I think you're probably going to get your adjournment, so you'll have plenty of time. But let's try to be better about getting stuff to one another. And please take a look.
Let's try not to put stuff in the day of the hearing so we
Yeah,
can
I'll-
have time to respond.
Okay,
You'll agree to do that, then we'll.
your opposition.
Gentlemen, please.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
No need to squabble on the screen.
Fair enough.
Does the board have any questions? Or does Chick have any questions? Does our attorney have any questions?
No.
There's one more hand up, but it's been up since the beginning of the hearing, so I don't know if it's for this case. Would you like me? It's a John Wopst or Wopst. Is that pertaining to this application?
On Wobst?
John Wopst.
No, that's pertaining to Walnut Street.
Okay, so that hand can come down until it's time for that application.
Hi, John.
Okay.
Kevin,
There's
I
no-
just had a couple of things if there are no questions from board members at this point, and you'd like me to go ahead.
Please.
I just wanted to see, John, it seemed as though there were a few modifications to the plan, which were responsive to the comments from the board and myself at the last meeting. Are all the plans consistent now? In other words,
Yes.
planting plan that matches the current site plan, is all of that now consistent?
Yes, I was yelled at one time about 10 years ago by Mr. DePetris, and I promised myself never to make that mistake again. So I'm a
Okay.
real, when it comes to members of the team, that's one of my mantras. They all got to match. So yes, they
That's
do.
really important. I have all the submissions and I will be checking that, but I just wanted your representation on that.
Rick didn't yell at me. He admonished me sternly.
As I recall, there was some discussion of treatment of the tennis court with respect to runoff.
Yeah, we're actually, I think that was on the plan that we submitted prior to the work session. We're actually, Mr. Guzowitz was concerned about that. So
Yes.
I almost thought some of that runoff from the tennis court was what was creating some of the wetlands to the north, like road runoff. So actually that water is being pumped up. There's a drainage system around the tennis court that's going to go in, and we're going to pump the water away up to the north. South.
And all of that, we do, yeah, to the south. All of that is in your submission.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And could you summarize the basic improvements? I know you kind of went through it. And what I usually look for, particularly if the board wants me to proceed with decision documents, is a comparison of setbacks and improvements, that essentially justify the permit. You did mention the driveway, but do you have a table of setbacks? I don't remember if that was submitted.
No, we could generate that for you though, Chick. Sorry about that. Mostly what's happening is the significant increase in the amount of vegetation. But we'll generate something like that for you. Sorry about that.
It can be helpful, particularly if we take the next step. And from what I can tell, I'm familiar with most of the decisions that you had outlined, and I don't take any exception to the representations with respect to the wetlands and the overall environmental benefits. Just for the board, there are a number of diagrams and submission documents. I can pull any up that you would like to see. but we do have the Aries site plan. We have an interscience plan that shows the basic environmental improvements. We have aerial photographs that were submitted, and all of that is part of what John has submitted for the record. So those are useful documents that are on file that we have if you need to see them. Other than that, I have no questions, and that comparison table would be helpful.
We'll get it to you, Chick.
You see relocating the driveway, providing drainage for the tennis court, and moving the structure out of the CHA, coastal erosion hazard area line, as well as the extensive plantings do certainly provide a net benefit as I see it. We can look at those numbers in more detail, but it seems as though you've been responsive to what I recall of any question.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We try to take. I'll just say, I've had the actual fortune of appearing before this board, so that I push really hard to try to make a project that is consistent with the things that I anticipate. And when I say I anticipate them because they're I try to anticipate the things that the board typically asks for, and I hope you'll find that we've done that. I trust you will, but I certainly hope that you do. Thank you.
Board, have any questions or any comments?
Not at this time.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to be heard? Therefore, I assume we're going to adjourn this for all purposes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion to adjourn this application for all purposes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this petition for all purposes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you for listening to me.
I'd just like
Thank
to
you.
say one quick thing before we move on. I'm seeing Christopher Kelly's screen on screen share.
Yes.
I
Yep.
sent him a message to let him know that, but I don't believe that's intentional. So,
I'm seeing
Mr.
an
Kelly, before anything that may be privileged gets exposed on Zoom.
I can't see myself, so that's why I don't know that. So I'm just.
Yeah, I see your screen. I see you looking at your Zoom email invite. So,
Yeah, it
You
has
have to
your
find a little red button that says stop share.
whiskey bill on there, Chick.
Gone.
Thank you, David.
no problem.
On the application of 3079, Felix and Elizabeth Roachon Trust, we have a big submission from their attorney.
Well, we have a request for adjournment as well.
We do?
Yes.
Okay, that's easy enough. I move
Yes, it was emailed to me, Diane, and Jackie Tuesday at 12:23. Request adjourn it, leave it open for all purposes.
I move we adjourn this at the request of the applicant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Kevin, before you go on, if I could ask a question, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
There are 7 new cases, and I did note that none of them involve wetlands under Chapter 116 of the Village Code.
Okay.
Where this is going.
Below that is one discussion item that I believe would be quick, and it would allow me to save some time on the conference. There is one representative from the applicant that is here, and if it's at all possible, I think if we could just do that discussion item.
Would you like to do that first?
Say it again?
Would you like to do that first?
Yes, if we could.
Fine.
So that's item 3058.
3058?
Yes, it's on for discussion.
Okay.
I can provide some background if you like, and then we can certainly hear from the applicant.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is the Lake Agawam Conservancy water lily removal project that we issued a permit for last October. They have submitted an annual report as they were required to do under the permit conditions. and it goes through and identifies what took place, what the existing conditions are, how Water Lily has grown back, and it basically is a request to proceed as is provided for under the permit to remove Water Lily this October. And that's contained in this letter dated September 9th from Rue Associates. Catherine Somo from Rue is on. If we could let her in as a panelist. And she could describe what they're looking for at this. But I believe that this is something that is provided for in the permit that was issued last October. There is a request to do one additional removal in the spring or summer, but that's not part of the existing permit. And I believe David would indicate that that would have to be requested, but we're not at that point yet. We're looking at a fall removal that the permit allows for. So if Catherine is on and would like to just provide a brief explanation, I can go to any photographs and that could be explained briefly so that we know what we're dealing with.
Very good.
Is Catherine on?
Not yet.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm on. So as Chick was saying, we did complete a water lily harvesting event during the summer, and it was successful. We were not able to remove water lilies that were near the shore, so they're probably about 10% or 15% of the water lilies remained. It's hard for me to see what you have pulled up right now. Is this, okay, I can see it now. So we used a drone to map the water lilies. This is about, I think it was about 4 weeks post harvesting, and you could see the amount that's grown back. The extent is very similar to what we had mapped last year. And at the point that we had completed the survey in August, we had seen about 40% regrowth at that time. And in accordance with the permit, if we had 25% regrowth, we were allowed to complete another harvesting event. And at this point, we're at the very peak of when we can complete that harvesting because the lilies are starting to die back. So we're looking to complete, as I said, another harvesting event before year end so we can help remove that nitrogen from the water from the lilies before they decompose.
So this is a beneficial project, as the board determined. All the reasons were in the original permit for the environmental benefit. The work that was done was a benefit, but now is the proper time to do it pursuant to all the information that we had at the time the permit was issued. And it has grown back so that, there is a significant stand that can be removed. If you recall the permit, this was the process, was to come in with a report in September that the ZBA would look at as part of their September regular meeting and just affirm that the fall removal can take place under the permit that's been issued. So I don't think anything needs to be done at this time. David may want to comment on that, but my read of it is that it's already provided for in the permit, subject to reviewing the annual report, which we have.
So this does not require any action on our part. We don't have to make a decision.
Is that your read of it as well, David?
Yes, it is. Unless something changed that would have led this board to alter that decision, that's my understanding and reading of it as well.
Yeah, we issued a 5-year permit subject to annual reports. And so we're on track with the first year being done. And this will be the second removal event that is beneficial to remove nitrogen from the lake.
Very good.
Just see if there are any questions. Otherwise, I think the applicant can proceed according to the permit. And I do understand that the town trustees have also authorized the work.
Does the board have any questions?
Not at this time.
No.
Good.
I just have
Catherine, I
one
would
question. Sorry,
Go ahead,
can I
Catherine.
ask one question? So, moving forward for next year, I mean, based upon what we had observed this year with the water lilies and when they have their peak growth, and then once we harvest and how soon they're growing back, what we think would be the best approach for next year would be to do a removal at the end of June and then do a second removal in early August. And I understand that as part of the permit conditions, we're supposed to provide an annual report, but also I wasn't clear if we needed to get permission in between those removal events or submit something in between, even if it's an email. So I just wanted clarification on that.
Catherine, my read of it is that the permit now only provides for removal events in the fall. If you wanted to do an additional removal event at the end of June, that would require an amendment to the permit. You would have to come
Okay.
back before the board. And just so you have a heads up, I think my recommendation would be that a report should be done prior to that removal so that we understand the effectiveness of the October removal and if additional work is needed in June. I heard you say you think it would be beneficial, but having an additional report, my expectation is that if a thorough removal occurs in October, you don't know for sure if you need it. Also, the event that was done this summer was done kind of at the last minute based on the installation of the diffuser. So I think we'd want to understand that a little bit more. And for the purpose of tonight's meeting, I would just say that it would require an amendment. If it's justified, it seems as though it would be something that, again, would be beneficial, but I'd want to see a report on the benefit of the October removal and how that would influence what to do in June.
Okay, so then once we complete the October removal, we would go back out and say June, take a look at the regrowth, and then provide a report and ask for an amendment at that time.
Or you can request an amendment anytime prior to June. I don't think we want to be last minute as we have in
Okay,
the past. So come in with the amendment
right.
anytime you'd like. Specify that
Okay.
you'd like to modify the conditions to provide an additional report prior to June and determine if additional work is needed.
Okay.
May I ask one follow-up question?
Sure.
Which is the 40% regrowth that was reported, was that a satisfactory outcome for your work, given that I know it wasn't the ideal time of year to be doing that work, but is that what you anticipated the regrowth might be, or was it better or less successful than you had anticipated for the purposes of preparing this report?
That's for Catherine.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a new area for us, and we're moving water lilies in this particular area, and we understand there's a high nitrogen problem, and we've been in close connection with Aquatic Solutions, who does the harvesting at Georgia Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And from the high nitrogen levels, basically it's like a natural fertilizer that's going on in the pond, and they see regrowth of the sago pondweed within 3 weeks.
Right.
So us seeing regrowth of the water lilies in Lake Agawam closely follows the observations that they're having in Georgia. So, that all being said, it's not surprising that we had regrowth in 4 weeks. And as far as the 40% coverage, I mean, that was just based upon percent overall. And I'm sure that if we went back out there, it would be a higher percent coverage compared to when we were doing the survey in August.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the answer to your question is I'm not entirely surprised, but the goal of the project was to remove nitrogen as one of the aspects of the project from, entering into the lake when the water lilies decompose. So
Right.
by doing 2 cuttings, I mean, it's beneficial in that sense. We're continuing to remove nitrogen. We did see, although we can't quantify it at this point, an improvement in the water quality. Like, we did not see those algal blooms that were getting caught up in the water lilies that they had seen in the past. They didn't have the odors that they had seen in the past. So it was definitely beneficial in that sense. And Chick, I don't know if you still have that image available of the aerators that were installed, but you can see that there's the water circulation is providing some benefit to the algae blooms that we had are seeing in the lake. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, yes, it is beneficial. We didn't know what to expect with the regrowth, but it seems to be in line with Georgica.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just add, Julia, that I'm not at all surprised that there was regrowth, because really the treatment that was done, the removal that was done, was not extensive. It had more to do with the installation of the diffusers. And I would expect that this October removal will have a much more beneficial effect. And
Right.
we'll to see how things come back by next June.
Thank you.
So we saw 40% regrowth after this cleaning. Now we're doing it in the fall, which should be more effective. Next year, you'd hope to see a regrowth of maybe 20%, so that you're gaining on this rather than, you're winning the battle.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay, Dick?
I'd just like to make one
Kevin, I think-
comment.
Go ahead, David.
The June meeting is, I'd like to remind the applicant, is at the end of the month. If your intention is to do this in June, then this needs to be in before the May meeting, in time to be heard at the May meeting. So just a note
Okay,
on
that's
that.
good to know. Thank you.
I would say do it as soon as you can, Catherine.
Okay,
Okay.
So thank you very much, Kevin. That took a little longer than I expected, but I think it's a great update. It's a good project. And
very informative, I thought.
yep, we're following the permit, and I thank you.
Very good. Now we'll go to the new cases. And yeah, I assume that, Chick, this is your swan song, right? Evening.
Yes, that would be, that's fine. So thank you. Have a good evening, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, Chick. Thank you. for all
Thank
your
you.
help.
You're welcome. Take care.
On the application 3081, 199 Cooper's Lane, LLC, 199 Cooper's Neck Lane.
If you're present for this application, please raise your hand.
That's
Is that-
the tennis court.
So for 199 Cooper's Neck Lane, would that be John Wopes? His hand has been up the whole time. Is he present?
Walnut Street.
I'm sorry?
On is Walnut Street, unless he wants to speak to one of these other applications, but he's,
I think his hand has just been up.
Can you put it down?
Yeah. Mr. Wopes, can you put your hand down so that we don't get confused?
I assume he only wants to speak to Walnut Street. Is that true?
His hand is down.
All right.
All right, so let me see who's here for this one. 199.
Do we have anybody for this application?
199 Cooper's Neck Lane, anyone?
Going once,
There's no hand up in the attendees.
going twice? We'll adjourn it, and if they happen to show up before the meeting's over, we can always plug them back in. All right?
All right.
3082, 129 Colson Lane. Has to do with the garage.
John Bennett is present for this application.
Jolie,
Yes,
I'm recused from this matter.
okay.
Hi.
Okay. John, I believe you're in.
Oh, hi. How are you? Are you what do we do? Should someone reading a notice or?
flag lot, right?
Just start talking?
Well, before we start, could you just verify that you've submitted notice of posting and mailing?
Affidavits of mailing and posting were submitted to the village today.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. That was in my talking points. This is the first thing. Again, this is just in case I get nervous. I write it all down. So this is one of these cases. Either it's you like it or you don't. I think it's fairly reasonable. I really want to put a garage in the front yard because the pool's in the rear, and usually that would not be met with smiles on the board. But I think this is a unique enough case, and the neighborhood all likes it. So hopefully it won't be a problem for you. But again, it's within your discretion. So just running through.
You can't even see. It's a flag lot. You can't even see the garage.
Yeah, it's a flag. Yeah,
It's next to another garage in the previous property. In the front.
It's tucked nicely in the corner.
it's stuck nicely in the corner. All the four neighbors that surround it are in support of it. The latest survey shows that we'd have to remove a maple tree if we ran a driveway all the way down to the back. I don't want to be presumptuous. I can some stuff to say about it, but it's pretty self-evident.
Steve on driveway space, and it abuts almost the other garage to the south.
Less hardscape. If it was up to the north, you'd have parking by the neighbor to the north's pool, all sort of stuff. So I don't want to be presumptuous, but everybody likes it in the neighborhood. You can't see it from the road.
Should I have any questions? Any questions from the board?
No.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We could close this then, if you wish.
Well, Peter, there is comment. There's one other person who'd like to speak, Peter Cardell.
Peter, I love you, Peter, but you don't need to speak, I don't think. That's the applicant.
Oh, would you like him to come in or?
Well, it's up to him, but God forbid you snatch what seems to be victory from the jaws of defeat or whatever that's.
I'd like to hear the presentation. I'd like to hear the presentation that you wanted to make.
Sure, that's fine.
I would
Okay.
appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the property is a 19,257 square foot lot located, surprisingly, Bailey found that it's in the R12-5 zone. But then when you look at the aerial that I sent to you, there's a lot of smaller houses in this nevertheless wonderful area of the village. So it's a conforming lot in terms of size, but it doesn't conform in terms of width. So the request here, as you can see on the survey, is to place the garage 10 feet and 10 feet from the southwest corner in a location that conforms to setbacks, but doesn't conform to the prohibition against having accessory structures in the front yard. It's a rare that I would make this request, but I think let's talk about the reason why you want to keep accessory structures out of front yards. Generally, it's for an aesthetic. The village of Southampton, very wisely, you drive down the street, you want to see the homes, and hopefully the accessory stuff is in the back, with certain exceptions where you have wetlands issues. But that's the purpose for keeping accessory structures out of the front yard. I don't think that's a problem here because it's a relatively deep flag lot off of Toilsome Lane. So no one's going to really see this. And so that's a good thing. The neighbors that surround it, the four adjacent abutting neighbors, have all been kind enough to submit letters of support. And I think that's because it makes sense that they should have it, that they would want it there. The neighbor to the direct south, Robert Min, it'll butt up to his garage, so it makes sense to put them there. The neighbor to the north, Von Sander. Let me make sure. I don't want to mess up the name. I'm so sorry because they've been so nice to give us Federico Van Sanden would like it where it is because his pool is in the southerly part of the lot to the north. So keeping that activity away from there. Less hardscape, otherwise you have to drive a driveway all the way up, essentially continuing, the de facto flagpole all the way up. So you're keeping more green and less hardscape. So that's a good thing. no impact on the character of the neighborhood, because you're not going to see this from Toilsome. And then I did something interesting, I think, anyway, I hope. There was a couple of cases that I've litigated. Kevin may get a kick out of one of these. It's my famous shed case. Sorry. Excuse me. It was a shed case. It's Coleman versus Corman. But the reason I'm citing it is that the court said that when neighbors give letters of support, that's a good indication that there's no impact on the character of the neighborhood. And I also litigated a case up to the second department, which I've attached to a letter, which was the Dolphin case, in which the court held all the surrounding neighbors gave letters of support. The ZBA in Shelter Island denied that case. We brought an Article 78 proceeding. The court directed the granting of the variances. The Shelter Island went to the appellate division. The appellate division affirmed, saying, amongst other things, one of the best indicia of lack of impact on the character of the neighborhood is letters of support. Mm-hmm. So when you go through all those, impacts, the criteria, no impact on the neighborhood. It's the minimum variance necessary to do what everybody wants us to do, including the applicant. It's to the applicant's benefit, but it's also to the neighborhood's benefit. So I don't want to belabor it, but that's pretty much what it is.
Thank you.
Drive down the street, you can't even see the property.
Excuse me?
When you drive down the street, you can't see anything. You can't see the property.
No, it's a pretty deep flag lot, given the area, yeah.
And it's front yard by name only. It doesn't, it looks like it's in a side yard, because it's in a flag lot, so.
Yeah, I thought, again, when when Peter came to me, I said, he said, I want to put the garage here. I think it makes the most sense. I said, yes, it does, but you're toast without the neighborhood's support. And, I guess it just speaks for itself. The neighbors all loved it, so.
So we have no more comments. I guess we could close this for decision. Is that all right with everybody?
Good by me.
Sure.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Well, you moved it, so I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. (3083). Donna Zilka, 28 Raymond's Lane.
Okay.
Is somebody here for the applicant?
Yes. BJ Steinbrecher is coming in.
Okay.
And Donna Zilka is here as well.
Right.
Okay. Both of you are in. You have to unmute yourselves.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you? Let me start the video. Okay.
Hey, BJ.
Hello. How are you? How's everybody tonight? Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Thanks for hearing our case tonight.
Hold on, no, before you start, did you submit affidavits of notice and posting to the village?
Yes, they were submitted.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, we ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
All right, thanks. Thanks for hearing us tonight. This is in the matter of the application of Donna Zilka at 28 Raymond's Lane, and we are seeking an interpretation of one of the village codes or a variance to permit the construction of a new two-story residence with a rear yard setback of 43 feet where the existing dwelling is currently 33.9 feet. Upon speaking with the building inspector, we were advised that it respectfully come to your board, come present the case. And we're seeking, first of all, an interpretation on Village Code 116-19C3, without the need for a variance for the reconstruction of the new two-story dwelling with attached two-car garage, and the rear setback being 43 feet from the westerly property line, which increases the non-conforming 33.9 rear yard setback by 9.1 feet. This will also reduce the total non-conforming lot coverage area of the dwelling and shed by 236 square feet. The village code states, just give me a second, pursuant to 116-19C3, a non-conforming structure may be enlarged, reconstructed, structurally altered, restored, or repaired in whole or in part, provided the degree of non-conformity is not increased. So basically, we're here to get an opinion from the board as to there's an area of the existing residence versus the new proposed residence of 152 square feet that is outside of the pre-existing non-conforming location. There's a portion that's outside. The 152 square feet is outside of the footprint of the existing residence. So the building inspector suggested that we come and get an interpretation from the board to see what you thought about whether we do need to get a variance or whether we are in line with what we are allowed to do on the property. I don't know if I need to go any further. If anybody has any questions, we're happy to answer them. So basically, we're looking for an interpretation on now that the new house is 9.1 feet further away from the property line.
Right. I'm thinking, sorry, go ahead, BJ.
We're allowed to use the existing footprint of the house, but we are proposing to shift the whole house towards South Roscoe by 9.1 feet. And this way we're decreasing the nonconformity of the lot itself.
So you're taking the west property line as being the rear, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Right.
We're moving the house east 9.1 feet. So currently the setback is 33.9 and we're moving it to 43 feet.
Yep.
So we're really looking for an interpretation from the board, and if we can't get the interpretation, if you don't agree with us that we have the right to construct the new home in this area, then we're seeking a variance on the rear yard setback 43 feet, where it's required 60 feet.
Yeah, we're going to have to hear from our attorney on this.
I think you should present the request for the variance at this time, just so that we have the whole record for that.
Okay.
Because there was no formal decision by the building inspector saying that this does or doesn't satisfy that section of the code. The board, it's a board of appeals. It should be, if an interpretation of his that would be being challenged.
I see. So we needed something from.
I think we met with Chris Talbot. We both met with him. I don't know if that is the building.
Yes.
Yes, he's the chief.
So what he did say was, this is the whole building board said, this is wonderful. You're decreasing the nonconformity. He said there's that little area, that 157 square foot area that, because the way the house goes now, and I'm not a professional. I'm trying to build this house for my family and me. There's an area that goes in a little bit. So what currently is now comes out this way, then this little piece that's 157 square feet is not built on currently. And he said that was just the piece that's not within what has been approved before. We're trying to make it better. Now, the reason to have that piece is that when one looks at the house, when I look at the house as a house to live in and a house, to look at, it makes it so neat. It makes the whole line go this way. If we had to stay within the, what there is now, and we would obviously make it a little bit better, it wouldn't be the same thing because we'd still have to keep that, we'd still have to keep that part unbuilt. I'm trying to make this look nice.
So you're saying
I've lived here my whole life. I'm with my dad. My dad passed away. Yeah, I can't keep his house. I'm building a house I want to do for my kids what my parents did for me. This is a family house that I'm building in an area where I think there are nice families. That's it.
you're saying that little piece does need a variance.
No,
Well,
that's
that-
what the interpretation is being asked for.
Yeah, we're asking for an interpretation on that.
Dave?
Yeah.
Now, the code states that we're allowed to enlarge an existing nonconformity without making it worse. So I don't see how it's making it worse. It's all within the rest of the zoning, the setbacks, the 40-foot front yard. So I'm not sure where the building inspector was seeing that we needed to get a variance for this, because although we're increasing the existing footprint, we're not increasing the nonconformity.
But it
We're
is that little
We're actually
piece
making the
that-
property
that he-
better by moving the house away from the property line.
BJ, everybody has your diagram that has that tiny little bit in orange, right?
Yeah, I could pull that up too.
Because that's really the piece in question. And if that piece, it's 157 square feet, if that piece is part of the garage, it makes everything flow so completely, smoothly. It makes the house look beautiful, that's all.
Correct. You do have that drawing.
Yes.
BJ, can you share that on screen with us?
Yeah, hang on one sec. Just give me one second.
BJ, while we're putting that up, just to put this all in context, are you building an entirely new house? In other words, is everything there being removed, or is this?
Yes.
The house is a very old house. The house has many, many drafts. The windows are creak. The house is old.
So the house is going to be torn down, removed from the property. Okay.
Correct.
The house that's
The
being
building
built
for
is
Raymond
a
Lane,
completely traditional house.
Yeah, and the net effect is that the new house is going to be 250 some odd feet smaller than the footprint of the house that's there now. Is that correct?
Say that one more time.
The new house, the square footage, the footprint is going to be 200 and some odd square feet less than the building that's there now. So you're decreasing the nonconformity.
We're decreasing the nonconformity, but the footprint of the house is increasing. But we're going to shift the house to the east, to the 40-foot setback, where the current house on the east, South Roscoe front yard is 49.6.
No, I'm not talking about the setbacks. I'm talking about the size of the house. The footprint of the house that's there now
Yeah,
is larger than the new building that you're going to build.
No.
no,
Hold on.
Eliminating,
Just
you're
to try and
eliminating
clarify.
footprint, and you're adding a footprint in another spot, but less footprint.
no, it's actually the proposed house is, well, the existing house is 2,176 square feet, where the proposed house is going to be 2,672.
If I
Approximately
may,
500 square feet larger.
if I may, to try and clarify the question here. The square footage of the house currently within that 60-foot setback versus the square footage of the proposed house within that 60-foot setback. Which one is greater? Is it going to
It's
be more?
the existing. I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the whole house. The existing is greater.
So the gross floor area within the 60-foot setback is greater now than it will be for the proposed.
Correct.
Or
Yeah.
Yeah,
would be
the existing is 594 square feet, encroaching into that 60, and then the proposed will be 408 square feet. And there's also a non-conforming shed that has 50 square feet of non-conformity in it
That we're going to remove.
that we're removing, yes.
David, I'm not sure we're using the right terms. Are we talking about lot coverage or square footage of the house?
Well, I'm talking about the coverage in the non-conforming area. In other words, the part that's going to be in the non-conforming area is going to decrease with the new house.
Correct.
The footprint is going to decrease.
The footprint will get bigger, but it'll be bigger within an allowable envelope.
Correct. The nonconformity will go down by about 1/3.
Yeah,
Now,
30,
are we talking about
32% less.
Is that both footprint? Is that 2 stories in that section currently and proposed? Or is
No,
there
they're
gonna be additional floor area for a second floor that's not there?
They are both one-story
Okay.
structures in that area.
Well, if you're decreasing the footprint in a non-conforming area, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
You too.
yeah, the total decrease, including the shed, is 236 square feet of decrease non-conformity. So it's 50 plus 50 feet for the shed, and what was it on the house was, just give me 1 second, 186 for the dwelling.
Correct.
Have any other comments? Questions? Now, this house, when it was built originally, at that time, there was no Raymond Lane. So the front, it faced South Roscoe Drive. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
According to Chris, there was no Raymond Lane at this point when the house was built many years ago.
Okay,
This is one of the first houses that are built in Roscoe Drive,
okay,
early house. Been there a long time.
yes. When was Raymond Lane put in?
I don't know the exact date.
Yeah.
It was after this house was built though.
Okay.
So at that time, it had 2 side yards, 1 rear yard, and 1 front yard. Now it's got 2 front yards, 1 rear yard, and 1 side yard.
Right.
The building of Raymond,
Yeah, the building envelope changes dramatically because of the new front yard.
right. It changes a lot.
It does.
It's just a corner lot now, where before it wasn't a corner lot.
Okay.
Is there anybody else? Anybody from the public who wishes to be heard of this application? Are there any hands up?
1 second.
Not
No,
that
no, there's no hands up.
So what would you like to do with this?
Well, we're looking to move forward and present this to the ARB, but the reason why we're here is to respectfully get your
Right.
opinion and hopefully side on our side for it to move forward to go to the ARB. We were originally going to, but then talking to Chris Talbot, and we decided our best route would be to come before your board and get your opinion on
Exactly.
this.
So Dave, I have a question for you.
yes.
I'm okay either way. If you want to just let the building department issue a permit, based on us having no input, or do you want to memorialize it by giving a variance for the slight adjustment that's done here? Then you would just have to write a decision one way. I mean, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, according to the code, we're allowed to expand that existing footprint, the nonconformity, but not increase the nonconformity. Which we're actually, we're moving the house, we're making the whole condition better.
For everybody, it's very close to the western line right now. The neighbors are thrilled.
And we actually got a letter of support from the neighbor to the west, the Goldsteins.
Here's my dilemma from a legal standpoint. The jurisdiction of the board is to be appellate only unless stated otherwise. The village code does not, if the building inspector asks for an interpretation, we could make that. So, but otherwise appeals would have to be of if he denied you a permit and said you need to go to the board, then we could find jurisdiction. So I think my recommendation from a legal perspective would be to leave this open for the next hearing. Let me speak to Chris and see if we can, what we can do on that. Because otherwise the board would be granting a variance that, from what I'm hearing, they don't feel may be necessary.
Well, what they did say is we do have to go before the board for that little piece to dot all i's and cross all t's. Which is why we did the ZBA step, which is
Right.
figured was the best way to do it.
And just reading the code, the non-conforming structure may be enlarged, reconstructed, structurally altered, etc., as long as we're not provided that the degree of non-conformity is not increased. Which
Right, and the
not.
degree of nonconformity is not defined in the code. Generally, the interpretation of that is the gross floor area or footprint wouldn't be changed. So if you added a second story, then yes, that would be increasing the degree of nonconformity.
Right.
But if you're staying at one floor, you're moving it further back and you're
Decreasing it by a third, 32% less.
I'm comfortable either way that the board would like to proceed. If that is the feeling to grant a variance for it, I could do that if that's what is desired.
Before we go, there is one letter of opposition in the file from one of the neighbors. Fred Weintraub wrote a letter. But I'm comfortable with you going ahead and doing a variance, or the other way. I'm comfortable with this application either way.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Dan,
you very much.
Mark, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm just, I mean, I'd like some time to talk with board members about it. I'm not exactly sure I have in my package what's there now. So I can't tell how much different the second floor might be. I mean, to me, this looks like a brand new house. You know, in every way. I'm not sure I have a problem with the variance, but I'm not sure I'm engaged with this, you know, possibility that we're simply expanding a non-conforming house, because it seems like a brand new house in its entirety.
It will be. Mark, you're correct on that. The previous house in 2009 came before the board and got variances and which we submitted, and it also was approved to have a second floor on the house that was never done for whatever reason. But there are some, in December of 2009, there was some decisions that were granted to the previous homeowner, including a second story. But this piece in question here is, it's one story, it's a garage, both the old and the new. So there's not going to be a second floor to it.
What I guess I would like to talk to board members about is, you know, the prior zoning variances, you know, don't seem particularly relevant to me when we're starting fresh with a vacant piece of land. I'm not saying the variances aren't warranted.
Right.
But I think it's a different analysis when you're removing everything that's there. And the analysis to me is there a way to build a conforming house? If not, if there's some practical difficulty in attempting to build a conforming house, then a variance is warranted. But I'm just not sure I'm on the same line of inquiry as everybody else, where they're questioning the expansion of a non-conforming house when in fact that house is being removed.
Yes, but we would have the right to maintain that nonconformity if we chose to.
Yes.
Correct. So, and then attach everything else in the conforming locations, which was something that we considered, but you know, it's at this point.
It was an aesthetic.
Yeah, it was aesthetics and
with the, you know, everything flowing the correct way. I mean, otherwise, the alternative would have been just to go ahead with everything, you know, the next steps already last month. I feel that this makes it look so much nicer. That's all. So I thought, be patient and see if this can be done.
Yeah.
I'm truly not trying to do, you know, anything that would make anything worse. Again, I'm not a professional, I'm not a lawyer, I don't have a lawyer going before you, it's just me.
The fact that you're moving it to the east by 9 feet, that's a benefit, I think.
big benefit.
Yeah. Getting it off that west property line.
Yeah, which is,
Taking out the shed.
yeah, taking out, removing the shed. There will be a cabana, but that'll be in the conforming accessory setback of 15 feet. And it is a goal of the board to decrease nonconformities.
Where is the pool?
The pool is in the back here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So this box right here, it's basically, it's going to be a lap pool.
All right. So it does.
Narrow.
It meets the setbacks.
Completely.
Oh yes, it meets the setbacks.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, it's 20 foot from the that side property line.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So what is the variance relief
Well, I'm not even sure that there's a variance.
Well, the
No,
variance
that-
relief, if we had a variance relief, would be the 152 square feet, I would believe, but I'm not sure. BJ knows better.
It's on the
Yeah, I
north,
mean,
north side of the house.
Right, 43 feet where 60 feet would be required.
correct.
And where currently there is 33 feet.
33.9.
Mhm.
Yeah, David, I don't have a problem with the variance request if that's the way we're framing this. You know, for the reasons that we're talking about. I'm just not sure if we're granting a variance or how we're doing this.
Well, we could discuss that at the work session. You know, we can close this for decision and discussion at the work session, if the board's comfortable with that.
Can you think about how you would write a decision like that?
Yes, it would be to grant a variance, so that would be a standard decision.
So you'd like to close this?
That's not my choice. If the board would like to,
But David, do we have we don't have an opinion from the building department. They haven't been
not
turned
that
down.
I've seen, no. So
So,
if the board wanted to say that, if they had been denied a permit and they appealed it and the board said, no, we don't feel that that's an increase in the degree of nonconformity, then I could write a decision for that. But here, as there's no interpretation provision absent an appeal.
I frankly would appreciate having the interpretation from the building department from which we could refer. Because right now, we're looking, it's unclear to me why we would be making a decision as a ZBA if there isn't something that's actually being appealed.
Can I
It's
ask?
maybe going to be appealed.
Can I ask your advice then? Because the other, when we were thinking about this and coming before you, which I thought was the better way to do it, the other thing was just go ahead and do it because you don't even need to go in front of the zoning board. But before I even decided to, this house never really went to market. It's a friend. Before the friend, actually, I bought it from this person. We did go to the building board. My builder went and he said, there's no problem. You can do all of this. When I went back and we thought we better meet with Chris Talbot, he said, you know, there's no problem, but this little piece, what if when you do this, the ARB says, maybe not, because did you go to the zoning board first? That's exactly what he said, okay? Yeah. So I wanted to, you know, dot the I's, cross the T's. He said, you could go ahead and do it, but what if? And then you'll have to go back. So I thought, and maybe I was wrong, maybe I should have had, boy, that Mr. Bennett sounded like somebody quite incredible.
Oh, John Sharp.
But yes, I'm happy I'm not on the other side of him. I'm just an individual. Just a person who wanted to do the right thing.
Right.
Well, can you get something from the building inspector? Get a letter from the building inspector.
And well, yeah.
Well,
what he said,
David, are you suggesting that you would do that before our work session?
Either the applicant or myself, if I don't know what, it sounds like Chris is leaning that he didn't think it needed one, but wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Right.
If he issues that determination as has been represented, his comments were, then this application can just be withdrawn.
Right. Right. Because
and the zoning board wouldn't have any issues then saying you didn't go before us because we had discussed this with you.
Well, because the building inspector would have rendered a decision that it didn't require a relief.
Right.
Then it would be subject to, you know, if a neighbor wanted to challenge that and said it does, then they could possibly challenge that. But as it sits right now, the board doesn't have appellate jurisdiction over something a decision that hasn't been rendered.
Right.
So issuing, like I said, issuing a variance for it when it sounds like the board members don't feel a variance is necessary.
Talk to Chris. That's
Yeah.
all done.
Yeah, and it's true. We're not asking for a rear yard variance. We're just asking for an interpretation on the code of 116-19, non-conforming uses, buildings, and structures.
So
You know,
is it my,
it states that that a non-conforming building or structure that is devoted to a conforming use may be enlarged, reconstructed, structurally altered, restored, or repaired in whole or in part, except that the degree of nonconformity shall not be increased, which we feel like it's not being increased. It's being decreased.
Well,
The
I
nonconformity-
think we're rehashing the same point here.
Yeah.
My advice as counsel to the board would be to hold it open, let me discuss with Chris, and possibly then maybe even just withdraw the application after I speak with Chris and he may render a decision on it.
I truly.
David, can I mention one other point? That, I think your GFA is, I think they're over on GFA.
No, we're not.
No, we're not. We're actually under by
500 square feet, I believe. Or no, 87 square feet.
800.
Right.
The proposed GFA is 3,500 square feet, where the allowable is 3,587 maximum.
But you have a proposed cabana.
That's included.
It's included.
That's included in the
Yes.
GFA?
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't look, oh, I see, because it says proposed pool house and proposed cabana. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got 3,500 where, okay. Agreed.
So, all right. Well, David, we would appreciate it if you could speak with Chris and hopefully then we withdraw the case, because I understand where you're coming from. You know, what are we granting a variance for here? You know,
Right.
when we're looking for an interpretation.
I understand it may be equally as expeditious, but to do it right, I feel that's the way.
Yeah, well, we want to do it right, you know, and that's why we're here. So.
Correct. That's why we're here, to get your opinion on that. Is good. If Chris Talbot says, or the building department says it's fine, we really appreciate being able to withdraw the application.
Sure.
We just want to make the house look nicer.
I think we understand that.
Yeah.
So we got two choices. We can either close it for decision, or we can adjourn for all purposes and ask the building inspector for his opinion.
I'd like to adjourn for all purposes, if that's okay.
If it was fine with everyone, it's fine with me.
Agree.
So can I have a motion to do same?
Second.
I have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 3084. James,
Thank you, board.
what?
I just wanted to thank you.
56 Gin Lane.
Who's here for 56 Gin Lane?
Yeah, they want heating.
Yeah, John Bennett is coming in.
When I went by there the other day, I didn't see any signs. Maybe I just missed them.
John, you're on.
There he is.
Hi, David, we submitted the affidavits today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll try to be quick. It's just one issue. This is a big lot, very large lot on 56 Gin. It's sort of a signature house in the village. Everyone is aware of it. It's one of the it might be the largest house in the village. Certainly the largest one on Gin Lane. Or maybe not. Maybe way down at the end, there's one that's larger. In any event, so the board was kind enough back in January of 2019 to approve the construction of a greenhouse And what we have submitted to you is our elevations of that greenhouse. And that's really an important part of the application, because the greenhouse is indeed a greenhouse. It's one big fenestration of glass with some mullions in it, but it's there's, if you're standing in the greenhouse, people could see you, you could see them. The only area that's not clear, there's an area shown on the elevation that's a farmhouse sink, and it's sort of like a potting soil, potting shed area. So it's a 458 square feet in size, and it's not the intention, nor it's pretty obvious, could it be the intention that this could ever, someone could ever try to sneak in some sort of habitable space or living space or anything like that. It's a greenhouse. What we'd like to do, and we sent a letter today, including the landscape architect, Arnie Maynard, who's an extremely prominent, world-renowned landscape architect. It's actually sort of a thrill to work with him. But what he did is he sent to us, and then we in turn filed with the board a list of plants to be grown in the greenhouse and stored over the winter, because it's the intention of the applicant to use the greenhouse to propagate and maintain and grow plants over the winter as well as during the summer. So the list includes some orchids, some narcissus and hyacinths, quite a bit of citrus, and some varieties that I'm just not familiar with. I don't know, 'cause I'm not that educated about this stuff, but Mr. Maynard says that these all require that there be heat in the greenhouse for the winter. And the use of heat in a greenhouse is customary. I think it's fair to say that the reason you can't have heat in an accessory structure is it's essentially an enforcement tool that the village has used, so that people can't convert studios and pool houses into guest houses illegally. But you couldn't do that with this. It's translucent pretty much. And there's certainly no need on this very large house to have any quarters, additional living quarters, legal or not. I think the board was kind enough in the Santo Domingo house on Captain's Neck some time ago, a very similar situation, to grant a variance for heat in the greenhouse. And at that time, I remember having some conversations with Mr. Guider about, we were both aware that what used to be the caretaker's house at the Lloyd Smith estate actually had a very significant, well, it was a caretaker's house, and there was a big old-fashioned, it was like something out of the past, out of the old world. It was a big connected greenhouse, the caretaker's house, and that had heat in it for the same reasons we'd like to have heat in this. So it's essentially an entirely glass, one-room structure. And I don't think the reasons that the trustees adopted the prohibition against heat in accessory structures, such as studios and pool houses, that's not, I don't think it was ever aimed at greenhouses. It's interesting, there's an interesting, I call it the TUFO, just like I call the heat in the greenhouse the Lloyd Smith rule. I call it the TUFO rule because it came out of Peter Tufo's pool house. You can have heat in an accessory structure without, you folks granting relief from it, but that doesn't include a fireplace. Go figure. So you can have a fireplace, but you can't have in an accessory structure, and that's been the determination for about 25 years. But you can't have central heating, for lack of better, modern heating. But that's what we're here to ask you for. And I don't think it really is. There's any difference between this and the one that you granted on Captain's Neck significant plant list from a literally world recognized landscape architect, Arnie Maynard. Interesting guy. Met him once or twice. Sort of like a force. But in any event, that's pretty much what it is. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Greenhouse and heat seem to go together like, apple pie and mother.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where maybe they should have a code amendment, but then I wouldn't get to charge for the variances. Oh, I'm sorry. My interior monologue came out of my head. Sorry.
All right.
But yeah, I hopefully you won't think this is a problem.
Yeah, greenhouse without heat is only a half a greenhouse.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, if you want it for the cold months to be able to keep the plants warm,
You're gonna keep plants over the winter that have to have heat.
Yeah, although if you ever have was it the gardenia, those really fragrant, beautiful flowers? Is that what they're called? Gardenias? They're white, they have this incredible, almost intoxicating smell. If you ever have one that you want to kill, just lend it to me because I have them for about 2 weeks and they die. Although I love them. But anyway, that's it.
Okay. Do you have any other comments on this application?
No.
You want to close it for decision, folks?
I don't have any problem closing it for decision.
Yeah, a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Close the decision. Very good.
Thanks, folks. Have a great night. Thanks for listening to me as always.
Thank
You
you.
have a choice, John. (3085) 131 Flying Point Realty, 131 Flying Point Road. Anyone here for this application? No?
Yes.
Yes.
Robert Fischetti.
Hello.
Rob, you're muted. There you go.
Yep, there I am. Hello, good evening. Robert Fischetti, attorney for the applicant, which is 131 Flying Point Realty, which is owned by Richard Sarcona, a longtime resident of Southampton. As we said, it's 131 Flying Point Road on the corner of Flying Point Road and Downs Path. If it's all right, I'd like to share my screen just to help to show what we're. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan. The lot is 74,877 square feet. It's in the R80 zone. It's currently improved with a house and a patio and a pool and a tennis court. And we're here today because my client, Mr. Sarcona, is looking to rebuild the house and generally keep the same configuration of parking in the front along Flying Point, and then the house and patio and pool and tennis. So with that configuration comes, some challenge in making the house just a bit bigger and dealing with the 2 front yards. Currently, the front yard setback is 80 feet required by the code. The current house is at 79.3. We are proposing 59.5, which is a less than 50% relief, and is, as you can see here on the site plan, it tapers off. It's 59.5 at at the most significant point, and not really any undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. If you can see here, the house, I mean, just moving this over 20 feet, not a huge difference. The neighbor across the street, Mr. James Bracken, did submit I happened to meet him when I was posting the sign. He submitted a letter or an email to Diane, the building department, saying he supported the application, and this is his first one here, but he wanted to see a landscape plan. So then we sent him a landscape plan showing here these proposed green giant arborvitae, and with that plan, you can see he's on the top there. He says, "Perfect, we support the plan." After he had a chance to review that, he's really, as you can see on the aerial, arguably the only impacted neighbor, and he sees no issue with it. There would obviously be really no view of the improvements from that street, given those big arborvitae that are planned. All other dimensional regulations for this lot are met. There's no other relief requested. We feel that, given it's less than 50% relief, it's not substantial, given that the two front yard issue is somewhat common. It's not a hardship that my client created. I think the development or the redevelopment of the lot is pretty reasonable as far as the size and mass and everything. Not really overdoing it, but just needing that little extra bit of relief on the side on Downs Path there.
The lot is extremely deep, it's just not that wide.
Yes, exactly. It's only about 165 feet wide, and given where everything is configured, the house ends up at really like the narrowest point.
Right.
So that's really my summary. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we're hoping that given that the most impacted neighbor is content with the with the proposed variance, that that's a good indication that it's a reasonable request for the neighborhood and within the characteristics of the neighborhood.
Do we have any questions or comments?
Well, Rob, you're leaving the pool, and you're leaving the pool house exactly where it is.
I can show you there a little. I'll show you the existing. I think it'll be new, but it's essentially the same locations. I believe the tennis court will be exactly the same, and the pool I think the pool's a little bit shifted, but so this is existing and this is proposed. So the pool's shifted a little bit, but not much.
But it meets the setbacks, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, for 100%. Yes. So everything meets the setback except for that one piece of the house there.
Okay.
So you're adding a pool house and you're building a new pool.
Correct. All within those are all within the setback.
And it's going to be a brand new house, right? You're not.
Yes, correct.
So you're scraping what's there.
Proposed two-story house.
Yes, proposed two-story house.
So what's the practical difficulty, Rob? Why can't you just fit the house within the setbacks?
Well, the tennis court and the pool being in roughly the same spots as they were. I mean, the pool's shifted a little bit, but really not moving much. And then with the patio behind it, and without changing the parking in front of it, really the only place to gain some additional square footage on the footprint of the house is to go towards Downs Path, unless we were to really start encroaching on the pool, which is really not preferred. There's not too much distance between the pool and the patio, and if we start bringing more of the house back there, it's going to shrink down with the patio. It's almost nothing.
Yeah, or forward, because how far are you from the street?
Well, the parking is proposed at 80 feet within the setback. And the house then is 135, given the parking, the space for the parking.
But the parking isn't part of the front yard setback, is it? If somebody can tell me differently, why are you showing an 80-foot front yard setback to the parking? That's not a structure. That's not. You could put the parking closer to the road if you wanted, couldn't you?
In theory, I mean, I'd have to speak to my client about that, but yes, I don't believe there's any code restricting that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to establish for the record that you have some practical difficulty in siting the house within the setbacks.
Yes, well, there's an effort to be made to to try to preserve for the economy of it, to preserve the parking in the spot where it is, to use the general footprint of the house without having to, if we were to shift up and then change to a longer house, that's really not, the design goal was more, and it's not particularly wide, it's 80 foot wide, which is pretty reasonable given the lot area. It's just because of a lot of it has to do with the way Downs Path sort of curves in there. But otherwise, I think the house squares pretty well with the lot. It's a good step back from Flying Point Road. Flying Point Road's a busy road. I'm sure they want some distance from there. But again, also the practical effect of keeping those other improvements in roughly the same locations.
Does it meet the 5-point test?
I believe so. I don't think there's any undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. I think the neighbors' support lends, some credence to that. I don't think it's a substantial variance. We're asking for less than 50% relief from the required. It's not a self-created hardship. It's not something that is, it's just something that's a product of the location of the lot and the roads.
Probably got 2 front yards,
And yes, in the 2 front yards. I think it's a reasonable development of a lot such as this in this this location, this size. But it just poses this one issue on the Downs Path side.
I have no problem with it. Anybody else?
Tony, it looks like you got it well screened from Downs Path too.
Yes, those are going to be some pretty substantial trees that are going to really block any view from the road. I don't think you perceive any difference as you're driving by.
Is that in the file?
No, this was in response to the neighbor's request. I'll submit it tomorrow, but we sort of ran this quick in response to the neighbor's request for some screening.
Okay, is there any detail included on size or?
Yes, planted at 12 foot to 14 foot on center, giant green giant arborvitae.
So Rob, what are you saying is the percentage variance requested?
Well, it's required 80 and we're asking for 59.5, so just about 25% off of the required.
That's just about a fourth. Anything else? We can adjourn for all purposes, or we can close it for decision.
I would like an opportunity to talk to the board. This is the first time it's been presented. We didn't talk about it at the work session. I'd love an opportunity to talk to the board at the next work session. I mean, I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I just don't think we've had an opportunity to talk about it.
Even matters that are closed for decision are for discussion at the work session.
Still talkable.
That's not a problem. It's up to the board if the board would like to leave it open then for further response from the applicant.
I'm okay to close for decision.
After that point.
So am I.
So if you close it for decision and you want more materials from the applicant, you still allowed to ask them for more materials?
We can, if the board wants more materials, or we can leave it open for submission of this survey showing those plantings. If that is not.
What I'm saying is if we close it for decision and then it turns out we want something other than the landscape materials from the applicant, would we still be able to request those additional materials?
We can always reopen it.
You'd have to reopen it.
It's fine.
Okay. Anyone from the public wishes to be heard to this application? No hands out there? Well,
No hands.
I move we close this.
So I move to close the decision?
Except for written submission, so we can receive this.
Great.
Yes, I will submit tomorrow.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I'll stop. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
3086 Phillips, 1 Hampton Road. This is the old, what was Saks, and before that was the old town hall on the corner of Main Street and Hampton Road. Something about signs.
One second. Okay, this is Susan Chase coming in. Susan, you're gonna have to unmute. You're in.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, I'm using my wife's laptop. So I'm Marcus Tohanchi. You see me here as Susan Chase. I'm obviously not Susan Chase. So thank you for being here so late. My name is Marcus Tohanchi. I'm the architect for the Philips auction house, and we did submit the affidavit that we posted and mailed everything out today. I assume that you have the presentation at hand that we submitted for the special acceptance for the variance to post 2 banners.
Yes, we have it.
Oh, okay, great. Just quickly, and I know this is not customary to allow to hang banners, but I wanted to give you, I wanted to just take a quick second to explain to you why we think that a variance could be granted for this. As you might know, the auction house it's one of the oldest auction houses. It's an auction house founded in London in 1796, and since then, Philips, the auction house, has locations in 10 other locations around the world. And a part of what Philips is doing, just like other auction houses as well, is they're putting up fantastic shows of artwork that have already attracted a pretty surprisingly large amount of people, even during the time of COVID. Just in the 5 weeks that we've been, or the house has been open, there's been almost 2,000 visitors. There's been 6 shows that have been presented, showcasing pieces from painters like Rothko, Andy Warhol, and Richter. And so what we found is that while everything is for auction, these are shows, art shows that bring culture closer to the community. And as you know, the location, especially in the retail environment right now, it is very hard to find somebody to take on a building this scale. And so Philips made the commitment to Southampton, putting up probably what is the largest location of any of the big auction houses, including Christie's and Sotheby's, but with the intention to stay, and really with the intention to bring art to the public and make it accessible. As you know, you don't have to be a buyer to see the artwork, and as such to announce their shows in the same manner that the Southampton Art Center has done it very successfully, with I think almost 30,000 visitors or 35,000 visitors a year. But in the same manner that you might know it as presented in this booklet, as you will see for the Met, for example, in New York, or as it is done at the Brooklyn Museum, all very historic buildings just like ours, or as it's done, for example, at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. So with this said, what we're hoping is to do banners, and we are restricting ourselves in that there shouldn't be advertisement, there shouldn't be long text. It's really about showing what pieces of art will be presented in the building with a minimum of signage on the banner. And we're hoping to attract more visitors, but of course, Philips is also hoping to make this a commitment over many years to come.
These banners, would they stay up permanently, or would they be changed from time to time?
There will be changed for each show. So each banner represents, so for example, they had a big show in New York where they had an Andy Warhol, significant Andy Warhol piece. So it would be a part of an Andy Warhol painting, for example. The next show would be a part of whatever the artwork is that is represented within the show. Those banners are attached to the building with wires, so they would not be something that is a structure. They don't require a structure. They are fixated to the top and the entrance and to the ground, and as such, not part of a structure of the building.
Okay.
And they would be
And,
replacing the banners that you're currently using. Is that correct?
That is correct, right.
Okay.
The ones that are out there were kind of temporary ones, but they would be replaced, correct, just like in the rendering. It
And-
would be just two banners.
And this variance could be exclusive just to your company. If you lease the building to someone else, they wouldn't get the right to use the banner. It would only
It would
be
yep, that would be absolutely
exclusive just to you.
100%.
Mark, you say?
No, it's fine.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition or in favor?
There
No.
aren't, there's no hands in the
Good.
attendees.
What are your wishes?
We wish to be granted the special acceptance of the variance to propose those two banners as shown in the drawings and the renderings, which could be exclusive to the Phillips auction house during the time that they have possession of the building.
What would the board like to do?
I'm okay with it.
So am I. It sounds interesting. It's a little different than what we normally do, but it sounds interesting.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Mark,
No, I'm fine with it. We can close it.
how about you, Julia?
I'm fine with it.
All right, so I move we close this for decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Really much appreciated. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening. That brings us down to the last case, 3087, number 781 Walnut Street. We've had this application before. I'd like to see what the difference is between the original application, which we denied, and this new application.
It didn't look too much different to me.
Didn't look that much-
Sam Flanagan is present.
We have Gil?
Yeah, I should be here.
Okay.
Oh, it is, yeah, okay.
Do you have me?
Yes, you just have to turn on your camera.
Okay, I'm having a little technical difficulty. There it is.
You got it.
Well, we had for a minute.
Okay. Yeah, for the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton. I did submit earlier today and previously the affidavit, so you should have them in the file to make sure that you do.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to start out, as the chairman pointed out, this is an amended, reduced application for a case that you previously heard before. And as you are probably aware, that case was the subject of a pending Article 78 proceeding that we brought in the state Supreme Court to challenge that decision. I do also want to say that my assistant on this, or my co-counsel on this, Tony Pasca, had intended to be present at this application, but he never received the link, but he is watching it on YouTube. What we hope to do with this application is to have made significant enough changes to it and to have addressed some of the concerns that you've had, that you will look favorably upon it. And if that happens, then of course the Article 78 proceeding could be discontinued. I should also point out at the beginning that although the applicant is shown as an LLC, which is quite common these days, the sole member of the LLC, Rosemary Renna, is a long-term resident of the village, having lived on Toilsome Lane for about 20 years. And she is presently residing in the house and intends to use it for her family. So as far as the nature of the relief is concerned and what the difference is, we submitted with the application package a comparison chart, which the architect, Lisa Zaloga, who is also listening to the proceeding and who can join us, prepared. And Lisa, if it's possible, maybe you could on the screen show that ZBA request comparison.
I don't think Lisa's here. There she is.
Do you have her?
She's muted.
Okay.
Lisa, you need to unmute. Perfect.
And do you have my screen?
No.
You have to turn on your camera.
My camera should be on. Why do I?
Okay, there we go.
Now we see it.
That's the site plan. Actually, what I'm looking for is the comparison chart. Lisa, if you have that.
Can you see
There it is. Okay, so that Mr. Guider asked about the differences, and they're pretty well spelled out in that chart. And one of the aspects of the application has changed totally. I'll just run through them very quickly because the hour is getting later and later. The first part of the application is to construct a one-story kitchen/dining room addition where the previous covered porch at the north end of the house was proposed. It would contain a greater setback from Pine Street than the previously requested, namely 17.8 feet versus 14.6 feet. And the reason for that would be that, as you probably know, and as I mentioned at the previous application, this is a legal two-family residence. And if the variances we request are granted, the intention would be to turn this into a single-family residence. And the kitchen on the first level is actually more like a galley-type kitchen, and the proposed addition would be enabled to make it to be a more usable kitchen with a seating area. And I think one of the things about that which might help the application is that I believe there was a concern from the westerly neighbor that the porch, the open porch and the swimming pool might constitute a somewhat of a disturbance to that neighbor, which we don't believe it would have, but notwithstanding that, if this were an enclosed one-story addition, certainly that part of the concern would disappear. So because all of the activity in that structure would be interior. Okay, the second.
So there would be no roof deck on there.
No roof deck. I think we could probably, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the plan is not to have a roof deck on top of that addition.
There is not a roof deck on top of the addition. There is still a second floor deck on the existing house that's existing and has been there since the house was built.
Right, but that wouldn't, that situation is changing, and it wouldn't be a first level roof deck which would provide conceivable view to the adjoining property.
Correct.
So I think that's a benefit. The second thing we took a look at was concerns about the swimming pool, and as far as I can see, what we're proposing now really can't honestly be called a swimming pool. It's more like a rather large spa. Previously, we had proposed a swimming pool of 348 square feet. The structure has now been reduced to 152 square feet, which is more than a 50% reduction. It's an 8 by 19 foot structure. So we believe that the impact of that, if any, on the neighborhood would be reduced. And I will hasten to point out again that the setback of that proposed structure from the neighbors both to the west and to the north is a conforming setback. We don't need any variance relief from those property lines. And if you visited the property, you'll note, as I noted in the initial hearing, that the borders of this property are surrounded by extremely tall, dense, and mature arborvitae, providing a visual screen of the properties to the north and to the west. The third part of the application is to construct a garage/pool house, again of a reduced size and at a greater setback from Pine Street, is also shown on the chart. And finally, the last part of the relief is the vestibule, which would enclose the front door entrance fronting on Walnut Street. It would now be only 15 square feet as opposed to 28 square feet, and it basically encloses the little steps that lead up to the front of the house. Now, I believe I mentioned at the first hearing that if you open the front door of this house, you are immediately faced with the door that leads up to and the access that leads up to the second floor, so that there really is no protection. When you open the door, it's right there. So we think that this request is extraordinarily minimal, 15 square feet. I also believe, from what my client told me, that historically this part of it did have a vestibule or a front covering, which was removed, and granted that may have lost the right, but it was part of the neighborhood originally. So I would ask you to take that into consideration. So I don't lose my track, as John Bennett said. I want to be sure I don't forget anything. I also resubmitted with this application a number of the materials we submitted with the original application on a letter dated September 17th, which included submissions I made back in December and early January. They include some photos of the property, as I mentioned. They include aerial photographs and tax map analyses of existing improvements in the neighborhood, including swimming pools and garages. They also included a summary of numerous variances which this board in the past has granted for swimming pools and garages, particularly on corner lots, one of which, the Gleason application, I think is probably most applicable in this case. You granted relief for both a swimming pool and a garage, as well as additions to the house on that application. Now, since then, I submitted the original application. We received letters of support from two neighbors, in fact, who had submitted letters of support in the first application. The first one being from Mr. Giordano. Now, we believe he is the most directly affected by the Pine Street variance applications because his house is directly across the street from this property. And he has reiterated his support for the application. Furthermore, Mr. DeGiorgi has submitted support for the application initially. He lives one lot over immediately to the west of the Wobsts. And in fact, his letter, if you read it, because of the lateness of the hour, I don't need to know that I have to read it. But his point was that given the mitigation measures we're talking about, including the installation of the IA system and the reduction in density of the house from 2 families to 1, his support of the application is even greater than it was when we began the process earlier on. So I would ask you carefully to look at those letters because I think they say a lot, especially the letter from the neighbor most variances on Pine Street. I also recognize that letter from a property owner on the northwest corner of Pine Street and Meeting House Lane, objecting to the size of the swimming pool. Well, I think that nobody would question the size of the swimming pool in terms of zoning requirements is really not an issue. There was mention or concern that the original project appeared to be an overdevelopment of the site. And I would point out to me that things like overdevelopment would mean to me lot coverage issues, gross floor area issues, and things of that nature. Well, from the plans we submitted, I think we've demonstrated that the lot coverage and the GFA proposals fall well below what the limits imposed by the code are. And in fact, the relief we're requesting does not include requests from those regulations, nor does it require pyramid relief or any other forms of relief. We've attempted to scale back the project to reduce it. Appear to be some of the concerns of the westerly abutting neighbor with the first application. Successfully on that, I would say that with respect to the ballot, one of the things you look at is whether or not there would be an adverse effect on environmental conditions and the neighborhood. I think I've addressed that by the IA system installation would submit that from 2 families to 1 would also be a benefit. This property clearly has some quote unquote practical difficulty, although we don't use that term as much as we used to, because of its long and narrow shape and the fact that it has very little as of right building envelope. We are improving the environmental conditions. I would submit we're not out of the character of the neighborhood with what we're proposing. And again, I would encourage you to look at the exhibits we submitted, both with this application and the previous application, showing other swimming pools in the area, including one diagonally across the street from this property on the south side of Walnut Street. There were a number of other garages in the area. I think garages have been found to be almost a necessity. I would submit that the difficulty is not self-created because of the way the property was developed and its size and configuration. In fact, And I think that's, let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. Say for the moment, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if I can't answer them, perhaps Lisa. If anybody has any, be happy.
Gil, I think the concern that we had previously was the substantial nature of the variance. And you mentioned Gleason, as,
yes.
A case where we granted a variance.
Yes.
Gleason, however, was a 35.6 setback for the pool, where 40 was required. So I don't think the board regarded that variance as substantial. Here you have a 60-foot setback. And how far will the pool be from the front yard?
Let's see.
31 feet.
31.
So here you're...
Two things to remember about this. One, if you look at the setbacks for the MF20 district, which this property is located in, those setbacks are much more substantial than almost any other setback in zoning districts of this size. But if you look at lot size, which is another way of measuring setback requirements, the setback variances are not that substantial. I think I pointed that out in the write-up to the application. I think I pointed that out in the preview. Take that into consideration. I think it's worthy of doing so in this case, because with the MF20, this lot would basically not be usable. You might also recall that there was, in the terms of MF20, I had a case on Layton Avenue several years ago, which involved expansion of the house, and the house, of course, was, in fact, I don't think any of the houses in that area did, even though it was an MF zone. And the board recognized there that there was an issue when you have a single-family residential system situation in a multifamily zone. And this would become a single-family residence.
Yeah, no, I'm confronting the same issue, but you are in MF20 and you do have 60-foot setbacks, and you're comparing this situation to other cases where you had 40-foot setbacks, and that's part of the problem. And then when you submitted the character of the neighborhood, if we look at that map, I believe, and roughly, I didn't, count it because I wasn't sure exactly how far the parameters of the neighborhood went in your map, but it seemed roughly like there were 7 pools out of about 30 properties.
But they're not certainly uncommon. But if I can.
No, I'm not, don't get me wrong. I didn't say, I mean, they exist, but the majority of homes in this area do not have pools. I mean, 23 out of 30, roughly, and 7 do.
Some do.
So I'm just looking at the character of the community as well, because I do want, the applicant to feel as if, we're not treating her differently from other applications without good reason.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just looking at something here. My client just texted me. There are pools in the fairly close neighborhood, albeit maybe not in the MF20 district, but within the immediate surrounding area even. But I'm glad you mentioned about front yard setbacks and the requirement of the MF20. If you look at this map that's on the screen now, I don't think any of the houses meet that setback. So it may appear to be, on the face of it, a big variance, but look at the character of the neighborhood. I don't think there's one property there that comes close to meeting that setback.
For the residents, for the primary structure.
Right, for the primary structure.
Right, and that to a large extent, Gil, I probably, we'd have to have, a discussion with the other board members. But I think initially our feeling was that we didn't have a great deal of trouble with expanding the primary residence.
But you may remember your decision just denied, your initial decision denied everything without specifying one versus another. It was just a blanket denial.
Yeah.
The board has had problems with pools with 2 front yards. This is not the first one.
More lots, yeah.
Yeah, and but
Yeah.
reading here that we're not in the definitional front yard. That's another thing that's different from some other cases. Here we need a setback, but we are set back considerably further from the street than the house is. So it's which I think is important, because the idea behind the code is to have these structures either in the side or the rear, and that works here.
There's a member of the public that wishes to be heard on this application as well. Would you like me to bring that person in?
Sure, sure.
It's Mr. John Wopst, or Wopst. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mr. Wopst, you can unmute yourself, turn your camera on if you'd like to be heard. You're going to need to unmute yourself, John.
Not working.
John, can you unmute yourself? I sent him a thing asking him to unmute, but
Okay.
okay. We can't hear you, John.
I don't see him either.
Okay.
Then we can't hear him.
I can't unmute him. I can only ask him to unmute, which I sent to him. All right. Well, we can't hear from him.
Oh,
That way.
If he can turn on his microphone, then we'll be able to hear him, but he's not unmuting.
I just promoted him to a panelist. See if that.
Yeah,
That may work.
he's in
Wow.
there. No, he's in there. He just isn't, he's,
sometimes when people haven't updated their whatever device they're using recently, it can make it so the sound does not work. Would it be possible for Mr. Wopes to phone in and we could put him on speaker and we could hear him through somebody else's device?
he actually is in twice on the, there's 2 panelists. I promoted him and also he was in twice. I don't know how that happened. So he's an attendee on 2 different devices, I believe.
Oh, that may be the problem.
I think that is the problem. So I've sent him a request to unmute on both.
Can we remove him from panelists and maybe ask him to sign in and sign out and sign in again to Zoom?
Yes, we could
Mr.
do
Wolf,
that.
you can.
Indeed.
I'll change him back to attendee and then he can sign out
Good.
and then try back in. Hopefully he's hearing what we're saying. So, John, if you can hear us, if you sign out and then you sign back in, we might be able to, on just one device, we might be able to hear you. Okay, it looks like he's on one device now. Try raising your hand now, John, on whatever device you're on. Let's try this again. Let's see. Okay, you're showing us in. See if you can unmute yourself at this point. I'll send an ask to unmute and you can respond to that. Okay, we can hear you. If you want to turn on your camera, but if your microphone is on.
Well, I don't know how to do that.
All right, just go ahead and you can just go ahead and speak. We can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay.
We can.
This is very discouraging. I have to tell you, it's my first Zoom meeting and I have no clue what I'm doing.
It's all right.
So I guess I have the board in front of me somewhere, so I have no idea. So this is an ongoing application from, hang on a second because I can get the correct name. It's got here somewhere. Rosemary Rayner, my neighbor, at 71 Walnut, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Right, and my first wife and I own the house next door at 65 Walnut. And we're married 56 years.
Yeah.
And we've had that property ever since 1968. And I'm having a few problems with this application, number one. And I love Gil Flanagan. I've known him since he started to grow up back in the day. His father was our teacher, my wife and I. So my point being that this is an application for a modification for relief. But the problem I'm having with this is the setbacks. And on top of that, I'm looking at the problem with that addition now is no longer going to be called a enclosed porch, but it's going to be called an addition, which means they could put a porch on outside it. They say they're not, but I gotta give you a couple other things that bother the hell out of me. Number one, I grew up in that neighborhood. 70 years ago, I was living there, and it was a porch, two-family house. It was a porch on there, right where it is now, and there was a staircase that came down. And the people who lived on the second floor the name was Willow's. No, Willow lived on the first floor, and Mahoney's, not Mahoney's, sorry, it'll come to me in a second, lived on the second floor. And the reason they had two staircases so they could escape. But I noticed lately, I started to go looking online on Zillow, they no longer have the staircase for escape from the second floor. They only have one staircase to go to the second floor, but it's designated a two-family home. Now, I understand what Mr. Flanagan said. That's going to be a one-family home. Does that mean that zoning is going to, I mean, does that mean that, not zoning, will that designation change, become a one-family home as opposed to a two-family home? First question. And that 255 square foot addition on the north side with the setback is 17.8, where 50 feet is required. And I don't think that's, and forget about the swimming pool, that's bothering me to no end. And the garage and the pool house, that's another issue. And that front addition, I might add, for that 15 square foot addition in the front is going outside the property line going down Walnut Street. When I tried to put a little 3-foot overhang on Rogers Avenue, now we've lived here for 60 years. We tried to put a little overhang on the front yard. They said we couldn't do it. We went before the zoning board. They said that was Dr. No, as you know who that is, Dr. Corn. And we could not do that. So they're going beyond and above looking for an addition for the front. And I understand that part about not getting wet when you walk in the house, because we had that problem. Still have that problem right here on Rogers Avenue. And we've lived here for all our lives. So I have a big problem what's going on there. And those setbacks, I think, are set pretty much in stone. I don't understand. When you're looking for such large relief, I don't understand where Mr. Flanagan's coming from. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure. So we have major, my first wife and I have major concerns about this. And we've owned that house, like I just told you, since 1968. We've never done we wanted to put a second story addition on years ago with a porch, with a staircase to allow people to come up the second floor in case of a fire. What did this new owner do when she bought the property? She took the staircase out and removed it. It's not there. And I can tell you that I looked at Zillow. Zillow shows there's no staircase. So, and on top of that, she's got a third floor bedroom. Maybe the building department should look into the third floor bedroom. That's not legal. That's storage area. So I got a problem with this woman. Had she come to us and talk to us, I'd feel a lot better.
Would I be able to respond to a couple of those things?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Yeah, John, I appreciate your comments. As you say, we've known each other for a heck of a long time. My dad taught me in school too, so I know what you're talking about.
There's someone else here to talk to too.
That's right. Anyway, I think dispose of to be a porch added to that addition. If the addition were approved, that would also need a variance. So we couldn't just do that as a matter of right in the note. As I said before in my presentation, if these variances were granted, we would agree to convert the property to a one-family use. So that would be, we would understand that could be a condition of any grant of the variances. We're prepared to do that. One of the things I understand is that lived there next door for a number of years. Property is and has been for quite a while a rental. His primary residence. I also understand that what would abut the activity we're proposing, with the exception of the vestibule, is really ball hoop. And I think Lisa may have a picture of that, which was taken from the neighboring property to the west of John. By the way, that neighbor is one of the two neighbors who wrote a letter in support of the application. So I think that the addition that we were talking about really would not impact the rear yard usability of that property. Lisa, I don't know if you can put that photograph on the screen if you can.
Can you not see it? I have it on.
Yeah. Okay, and this I understand was taken by the neighbor to the west of John's property. You can see there, you can see the screening that's located on the other on the side of the property that my client owns. So that I think there's dense screening. It's not as if there were usable living space that we would be disturbing by what we're building back there. So I think that argument may not be as strong as it might have sounded. And again,
this is the survey, Gil, of Wolf's property. You can see the size of the blacktop area.
Right, and if that, yeah, that's good. And this is where we're talking about constructing it. It bears repeating that we don't need setback relief from that property line. We conform with that. So the person who most directly affected, the people most directly affected, are the people on the east side of Pine Street. In fact, that has written a strong letter in support of the application. So I think this kind of speaks for itself. I mean, we're sensitive to some of John's concept. Amended the application. We've tried to make it less intrusive, if you will, although I don't think the other one was. I think we tried to address the board's concerns, and I would ask that you take that into consideration.
So may I speak?
Sure.
More things should have.
May I speak?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So that photo shows a basketball hoop in the backyard. I immediately had that removed when I found out the upstairs tenant put it in there. That's not what it's meant to be. That was taken away immediately. Number one. Number two, the reason I have that parking lot in the back was to fit the village code to allow enough parking space to get off the village streets. So I put parking for 2 apartments, which I allowed 4 parking spaces in the back. And I did that back probably in 1985 or 86, something like that. So I followed the code right along. We have a problem here with somebody that's just moved in the neighborhood decides she can make something that's a mountain out of a molehill, basically speaking. This is out of character for the neighborhood. The pool's out of character. The reason I have that parking area is so they don't park on the street, and that's the whole bottom line. And that photograph with the basketball thing went away right away. I had that removed. As soon as I found out about it, I had that removed. This is like a pissing contest.
According to my client, there's still a basketball hoop back there. She just texted me. But the main point of this is that the area that's opposite activity it's not a seating area. It's parking.
I don't want to fight with you. There's no basketball thing in the backyard. And if you want me to drive you by tomorrow, you can drive in the backyard and look yourself.
Okay. Whether or not the basketball hoop there, the fact of the matter is that whole area is paved.
Yes, because they said we could not park on the street.
Gentlemen, please address
thing that you have the parking. I'm not saying that.
Address the board, please. The basketball hoop it's not a matter that's before the board. Please stay on topic here.
About the basketball court.
I'm sorry, David.
Thank you.
I will put it in.
I'm going to go back to my original thing about the parking area. The reason we put that parking area back there, which was probably 1968 or somewhere in that, or so 74 or 75, because the village said you could not park on the street during the winter at night. So we put that parking area. We have a two-family home, and we had to have parking for two families, which meant we had to have 4 parking spaces.
And that's a great thing.
I think the point about the parking is not that the parking is a problem. It's the fact that the swimming pool is adjacent to parking, not livable space or habitable space where people would be congregating.
Okay, if you go to Zillow and look online and go to Google and look online, the problem is that the pool area and that first story addition is going to be right in the backyard of my tenants, and therein lies the problem. It's
adjacent to a parking lot.
No, to the house.
No, if you look at if you can see my screen, that your parking lot is right here.
Lisa, I cannot see your screen for some reason.
Really?
Does everybody else see
Oh,
it?
I can see it. I'm sorry.
See it.
Yeah,
I can see it, but if you look,
zoom in a little more, Lisa, on that area because it's not that big.
Anyway, it's not conducive to the neighborhood. You guys can figure it out. We've owned this property since 1968. We've never done a thing. We wanted to put a second-story addition on with a deck, and we were refused by Dr. No. That was Dr. Corman back in the day, and the problem was that we didn't have the room on the side yard variances. Now here we got a person that's going to put an addition on, which could eventually put a deck out there after you guys have come and gone. Believe me, they can do it. You all know about it, and I'll have to complain about it. But it's not working for me.
Okay.
We've been here too long. We're third generation in this village, so you want to think about this.
We get your point, John.
Thank you.
I think given the circumstances,
Thank you, Kevin.
I think given the circumstances, we would like to keep this matter open for all purposes.
I'll have my wife write something too.
Sounds good to me. How about the
Thank you,
board?
Kevin.
How about the board? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's good with me.
It's fine.
Anybody else who wants to speak? Guess not. I have a motion to keep this open for all purposes.
I'll make a
So
motion
moved.
to adjourn this for all purposes.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was the last case, folks.
Thank you, gentlemen, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I move that the September 24th, 2020 meeting of the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals be closed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Hi, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Julia, Dan, David,
Good night, all.
good night.
Good night.